In this episode of Common SENSimilla, we'll be talking to the founder and CEO of Canna Provisions, a Massachusetts-based dispensary. Today's guest is about as badass as they come, growing Canna Provisions to be the 9th largest independent cannabis company in the state of Massachusetts, with over 140 employees and a valuation around $65 million. Damn, Meg! Meg Sanders, welcome to Common SENSimilla. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be able to chat with you this afternoon.
So full disclosure, you are a client, one of my favorites, I might add.
Aw, thank you.
So I'm happy to be here. And we had a great conversation with Cam a couple weeks ago, which people seem to have loved. And we'll talk about him a little later. But first, I couldn't handle the shaming from my employees anymore. And I finally closed up my Pandora account after all of these years and got myself on Spotify. That's, maybe I'm showing my age, but I'm updating my playlists. I'm curious what your top songs are on Spotify, go-to playlists. Can you guide me a little bit? I know you're a music fan.
I am a music fan. I would say it's really time frame based, like how you get in a groove of something and you listen to it for a while. And so most recently I've been listening to Grizz. Just a great all around, no matter what you're doing, just fun, upbeat mode. I just love it. Get you moving.
Right.
That's
Grizz.
So I listen to definitely Grizz. My daughter has me into dubstep and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So
okay.
Yeah,
cool. Lots
big
of glow
fan.
Sticks, EDM fests. I love it.
I'm not EDM festing yet. My daughter does all that for me.
She'll bring you.
But she, I get all the energy out of it, and she shares so many great bands. But yeah, that's kind of where I am right now.
You're a cool mom. I can tell. You'll be there.
Well, yeah, if you sell weed, you kind of you get into the cool mom category a little bit.
For sure. Like that. Like bingo. Yeah. It's like the teen years didn't even happen, right? Like you became cool. Boom.
Yeah. I remember when I told my kids, they were, I don't know, my son was still in high school, or maybe he was in college at that point. And my daughter was in probably middle school or something. And I told him, my son's response was, "Of course you are." And I'm like, okay, thanks. I guess that's awesome. No surprise.
They know the tree they fell from. They know the tree.
They do.
I've been told by a certain someone who may or may not still be in this chat that you're also a huge Wilco fan. Me too. I've seen them many, many, many times. What's the best Wilco song to listen to during a breakup?
Oh, during a breakup? Oh, yeah. Sadness. Goodness gracious. I have to think about that one.
Okay,
what do you think it? What do you think it is? What is your? What do you think?
I'm trying to break your heart, of course.
Well, that's
it's right there in the title.
Pretty appropriate, yeah.
What's the best song? And we can come back to this too. I'll plant both of these seeds. Best Wilco song for a breakup. Best Wilco album or song to get high as hell to.
Oh, high as hell to. Oh, goodness gracious! Can I cheat?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just going to go to my. I'm going to my Spotify. Yeah, I'm going to my Wilco Spotify.
We'll bring it full
because I love it. It's so genius, right? It's so funny. And I was introduced to Wilco, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago by a high school friend of mine. And it was funny because when he was telling me, I was like, you keep talking about this band, you and I generally align, and he was like, I said, help me out. Cause there's so much. It's like there's a lot of, a lot of music. And I'm like, help a sister out, like get me started on the right foot. And I would say his recommendation is still my favorite. And maybe it's because that's how I fell in love with them. But Sky Blue Sky is just like dreamy.
What an amazing album. Okay. So maybe I have one last Wilco question and maybe you just answered it. Are you, and this is a nerdy Wilco question, so feel free to ignore me if you want. Was the band better with Jay Bennett or post Jay Bennett? And you just told me, what your favorite album is definitely post Jay Bennett.
It is. Yeah. And I don't think I'm that I don't know that I'm so discerning I would know the difference,
The
So
cacophony.
I pretty much know them post, definitely.
Yeah.
And we actually just saw them in Toronto. It was so great.
That's awesome. Nils Klein is one of my all-time favorite guitar players of all time. And the album you just mentioned, Sky Blue Sky, has a song on it called Impossible Germany that has some of the best guitar work I've ever heard in my life on it. And that song is such a beautiful mess. I love it so much. But you can tell Jay Bennett's influence was like the Yankee Foxtrot Hotel stuff, where it's like orchestral cacophony, organized cacophony, right? Like all this swelling and all that sort of hugely layered songs, you know. So that whole album is that, and that was my introduction to them. So when I'm going through a breakup and I'm gonna be stoned, I'm probably listening to Yankee Foxtrot Hotel. Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
I love it. I just love it. Yeah, I'm lucky to be aware of this amazing little band that is just prolific and so talented live. Genius, fucking genius in Toronto. Like Eric was blown away. He's only familiar with like when I happen to listen to them, so he doesn't even know them that much. But man, he just looked to me, he's like unbelievably talented. I'm like, I know. Why do I take you to an untalented band? Come on, man, give me some credit.
But it's also the pot, like they're, you know, yes, all of that is true, but their live show is a level of professionalism that you don't always see, right? Like, you know, and it's not like, it doesn't look like they're having a ton of fun on stage, but it looks like everything is thought out, everything is intentional. They Incredible. Know every note they're playing, even when they're improvising. Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you got up to Toronto to see him. That's fun. Yeah,
it was really fun. We had Toronto, wow. What an incredible city.
Great city.
Weed everywhere, you know, just dispensaries. You can't walk 2 blocks without hitting one. And it was just really great. This is the best. We're at Wilco. It's an outdoor amphitheater right on the lake, just stunning. And it's beautiful weather. And we're like following the cool kids, trying to figure out where you can smoke weed. And we were smoking one place and we were watching a group smoke, and this cop came up to me and he's like, let me show you where you can do that. And we're like, well, let's follow him. So we followed over and we followed the cop, followed the group, and then we blazed away. And it was so funny. And then there was another time we went to 3 different shows at the same venue 3 nights in a row. And the second night we were there, we went and we were in the same place. And I was like, well, this is where the cool kids hang out and smoke weed. And there was a cop like standing, I don't know, 50 feet away from me. And he waved at me and I waved back. And I'm like,
it wasn't the same cop, was it?
No, different cop. Oh. And you know, and they're Canadians. So, you know, everybody's so nice. They're like, oh yeah. And he goes, watch out for security. And I go, what? And he goes, you're fine, but just watch out for security. And I'm like,
that's hilarious.
Okay. Like, I mean,
thanks, cop.
Jeez.
Yeah, the cop is telling you you're going to get in more trouble from the
security guard.
Security.
Yeah, he's like,
what
I
a
don't
world
care.
we live in. God bless Canadians.
Thank the Lord, man. Thank the Lord we live in this amazing, crazy place.
Well, let's get into it, because you and I exist on a planet that's been around for billions of years, and for some crazy reason and by some crazy fortune, we find ourselves spinning on it during this time when cannabis is becoming legal, and we're able to start businesses on it. So yeah, it's wild. It's a wild time to be here. I want to talk to you about planting your flag. But first I want to kind of get to the heart of what motivates you. So I'm curious about your pre-weed life. What were you doing before the devil's lettuce got a hold of you?
Pre-weed, it's a sordid story. I mean, everything from, you know, I was a B2B sales rep in various industries, stay-at-home mom. I started the youth football league in Boulder, Colorado. And my first year I had 40 coaches and 300 kids and won 2 championships. And I was, you know, I obviously like biggest fan of my kids in any sport or activity that they were doing. So my son, football and lacrosse, and my daughter, soccer and competitive dance, and, you know, did all that mommy stuff. And Then I was working actually at a small financial office in Boulder, just trading one guy's money. And I kind of was in the compliance, leading the compliance side, making sure all of our accounts are set up and the traders are staying under their trade limits and their deposits are, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And, ended up working through a really interesting series of trades in Morocco as that company was privatizing. As that country was privatizing. And it's always interesting when that happens. There's just a lot of opportunity depending on the country. Greece had the same kind of phenomenon. And figured out a lot of things on how to do it and get different accounts open in different countries and blah, blah, blah. And really kind of went to the partners and I'm like, hey, I think I could probably do a lot more of this. I'd love to do this, but I don't want to do this and make everybody else a bunch of money. I want to make money too off of it. And they pretty much said no. And I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of lost my motivation to do it. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have been there. It's not sour grapes. It's just fact. And I was super lucky. I got off at 2:00 in the afternoon, got to pick up my kids every day from school. I was super fortunate. But it just didn't serve me anymore. And I was at the moment in time where I was ready to go back to work and career. And so a friend of mine was getting into cannabis in Colorado.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you. I don't like podcasters who interrupt you, but I'm going to do it right now because I want to stop you before you get to weed.
Got it.
And I want to talk about that moment of walking into, because I have a very similar story where, I went to my boss at the time and pitched him CannaPlanners. I pitched him, because we were building, my company was building websites, or the company I worked for was building websites, and I pitched him CannaPlanners, and it was a similar thing. And I understand you weren't necessarily pitching the cannabis industry to your colleagues, but I had the same experience where they're like, no, right? So let's talk about that. That feeling of just defeat. Was that kind of that moment for you where you were like, okay, this is me. This is all on me now. I get how this works. I understand my place in this position. And I've just been told basically that it's X and not Y, despite me wanting to do something more ambitious.
That's exactly right. And I'm not the kind of person that I've never been the kind of person that can just show up 9 to 5 in the same job, never change, never do anything. Same. That's just not my, It's not my MO. So I think there was nothing motivating about staying there, creating and doing, just figuring things out, problem solving. It wasn't challenging. The work itself was challenging, and just that it was complicated, getting the money from here to there and all that stuff. But it wasn't challenging in that I had ownership. It wasn't woo, me. It was, and not, I don't know if that even sounds right, but it wasn't something that I was going to be able to take and make my own in any way, shape, or form. And lo and behold, after a million different assessment tests and, from disc to flipping caliper to, a million different, personality and what you should be when you grow up kind of stuff. Lo and behold, but lo and behold, I'm absolutely an entrepreneur and a leader. And that is just that's who I am. And I really do love figuring things out and making things better. And I just was at a moment in time there that there wasn't really too much more to figure out. And I certainly wasn't motivated to do it because it's a lot of work, when you're trading in a foreign country, you're on their hours. And then I also had my day life of children and house and husband and all that stuff. So I don't know. It just bummed me out because I think had they
that balloon,
had they realized who I was, had they done the work that I'm doing now with my employees to figure out what gets them going, and what do they need and what they're passionate about and those kinds of things, which is what I love doing as a leader. I just think about, God, what can we have accomplished together? But it's all good. Again, I don't regret it. I got a lot of experience out of it and learned a lot about compliance, and it got me, bottom line, it got me here somehow. That's always how it works.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to paint you. This is a question I often ask because it's me. So I'm not trying to paint arrogance or ego on you or anything like that. Beyond that, was there a sense, did you have a sense that you were smart, you were the smartest person in the room?
I mean, yeah, I would say that I kind of, well, full disclosure, I'm an only child. I'm a Capricorn, like, isn't that tell you everything? Like,
yes,
I lived in a bubble of one and never really, to a fault. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was spoiled rotten, and I was the only, I was the youngest grandchild or the only grandchild, depending on which side of the family.
I'm a middle child, so that's basically an only child, the forgotten middle child.
The forgotten middle child. We often, and it's funny because we're often attracted to each other. So my current partner is a middle child. My former husband was a middle child. So yeah, it's kind of funny, right? But yeah, I think I grew up, and this is also a curse. Let me be clear. It's something I work on every day. Not understanding how that there's a whole nother connection out there, So it was just like, Meg, bull in a china shop, just like, but this is what I want. What's the problem? I want this.
Yeah.
And
I know this is the right solution, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I relate to that. It's like, this is the solution. You can challenge me and we can debate and maybe come to a better version of my solution, but my solution is the best.
Yeah. And it's been a lifelong journey of, being that way, figuring out that that's how you're occurring, that can come across as pretty, aggressive or arrogant or, not thoughtful. And so that's kind of the stuff that I've been definitely working on since my late 40s into my 50s.
So let me ask you this. So were you conscious? I mean, you knew you were an only child. You probably were aware of your personality traits. You probably know yourself fairly well. Prior to that day of walking in and then popping that balloon, did you realize that professionally? Meaning, I guess, like, without you knowing when you walked in that day, was that going to be the final straw because you were aware of like these personality traits? I don't know.
I don't think I was that aware. No, I don't think I was that aware. I mean, I think it was just okay, well, I'll take my ball and go home. That's just kind of how I rolled. So if I didn't like it, I go find something else or start something else or do something else. I mean, even when I was a stay-at-home mom, I ran 2 different businesses just out of my home. And it was just because that's how I'm wired. It's just like, I had a Angler Baby, which is a little fly fishing company that made cute little baby clothes and toddler clothes with flies and fish on them.
Okay.
So that, and I had, I don't know, 20, maybe 30 fly fishing outfits around the United States that bought from us. And, I was right out of my office. I pack it up myself, ship it myself, all of it. And that was super fun. And my largest client was actually Cabela's. So that was pretty cool.
Cool.
And so I did that. And then the other thing that I did from home was I ran a supper club. So I did meal prep for, I think I probably had 12 moms. And I would, get them 2 weeks worth of food, 2 weeks worth of suppers, basically. And it's all freezable. And they had the list of what to do. They had the recipe, they had everything. And they didn't really have to do too much other than heat up the oven or that kind of thing. But yeah, that's another thing that I did. And it was pretty cool because it kind of paid for our food,
So you were you were consciously, being an entrepreneur before you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I think I think part of it is the only child thing in that I'm just going to do it myself.
Yep.
Let me just do this myself. Yeah. And part of it was, I just wanted to run the show. I didn't want to, didn't really want to answer to anybody else. I just wanted to run the show. So that's what I did forever. And then that kind of got me, lo and behold, into cannabis right when it was really getting crazy in Colorado,
So you're living
2009.
You're living in Boulder, you're making suppers, you're putting
Yep.
flies on little baby bibs for when they go fly. I'm picturing like the toddlers are actually fly fishing with these very preppy. No, I know what you're doing, but
Yeah.
you're running these small businesses, taking, being a mom, which is, a 24-hour job in and of itself. And your balloon gets popped at your 9 to 5. What did you do? Like that day, I'm like, sorry, Meg, not going to happen. Great idea. Not for us.
Well, I think for
Go back
me,
to Morocco.
yeah, for me, it was just, I didn't quit. I just figured out, I think I just became a lot less excited about my job. And you know how it is when you get the gumption up to go ask, these cajillionaires, hey, I've got a really good idea. And, let's do this. And I think the other thing, kind of only child, I never anticipated they'd say no.
Sure.
I was already sold. I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly how I'm going to do this. This is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to need to go here and meet these people. I had it all planned out. That's because that's just how I roll. And it just didn't work out. And I think that's when it became clear I wanted an exit strategy, and I started thinking about what else I could do. So, and that at that time, like I said, it was probably 2008, 2009 when that happened, early.
So it's right around legalization in Colorado.
Right when everyone started opening dispensaries and leasing up warehouse space and throwing, with no, this is accurate. Zero permits, zero building permits, zero inspections, and there was no regulations or no regulatory bodies. So it was crazy. I'm surprised. I'm actually shocked that more things didn't just burn to the ground. Really shocked.
A lot did, though. A lot did. And in fact, I'm not sure if you've been watching the news, usually during the summer months, but most of Colorado is on fire. So those places did all burn down. I remember it. It was a wild time. So how did you get there? Because there's, obviously, and I hate using the phrase because it's so lame, but the green rush, especially when it first started happening in Colorado, was it was simultaneously somehow both a very quick process, but it also seemed to stretch out for so long. It was messy. How did you know that that's where you should be and not doing your own thing in finance and compliance?
Oh, well, not doing my own thing in finance and compliance was super simple because you have to have your own money to do it. And I just didn't have the amount of money that these guys had in various holding banks for trading against. So it just wasn't an option. And
was it a passion though? Was it a like, let's like, had you had the money, would that been something you pursued?
Probably just because I knew how to do it. And I am money motivated. I'm motivated by a lot of things, but I'm also money motivated. And I was like, well, shoot, if I could have figured out a backer, I think, I might have reconsidered that, but that's not my wheelhouse. That's not who I run around with. It's like, there's us in our little middle-class home in Boulder. And then there's the three partners who live in 14,000 square foot homes in the Boulder Hills. You know what I mean? So It's just, it was just a lifestyle and a circle that I certainly did not run in. So it was just one of those things. And it wasn't like I was super passionate about it. I was super passionate that I'd figured out how to do something, and I thought I could make more money doing that. And I also could find other trading ideas like that. And that's fun actually, because, it's using your brain and creativity and how do you figure it out? And, but I think for me, it just wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm on fire about finance. That wasn't it. It was just, that's what I happened to be doing. And it worked out for a lifestyle choice. It was, we did well when we were working for that company. And my ex-husband was a trader in the company. But once I kind of figured out I was not going to be able to have my way, I was just demotivated, and it was kind of became the exit strategy of, well, what else can I do? What else is out there? And at the very same time, Colorado was getting going. And a friend of mine that I went to school with was getting a big cannabis grow going in Colorado, big. Big for that time.
Sure.
And, now it's like you think about 200,000 square feet or a million square feet, and that would be big. And at the time it was, 43,400 square feet. So it was tiny in the current scope, but we felt like it was enormous, and it's cost a lot of money to build out. And
yeah, I bet.
And I wasn't like, I called him and said, hey, I'd like to do this with you. And he was like, okay. I was like, hey, can you tell me about what you're doing? And then ran into him at a couple football games, and he told me some more. And I kind of just kept saying, I'd like to get involved. If is there room for me to get involved? And, and it was literally.
Why did you enjoy cannabis? Did you see despite like the messiness of the industry and it only being like literally in your backyard at that point in time? Like, what was the opportunity? What did you think you saw then?
A pure opportunity to get involved at the ground floor. I mean, it's so simple. Yeah. This was brand new business, which I'm really good at. This is what I do. I'm a starter and a builder. Mm-hmm. And so I was super intrigued I don't know anything about this. I have young kids. I'm not consuming cannabis. My ex-husband consumed a shit ton of cannabis, so I was familiar with it. I wasn't against it. I just didn't partake that much. I had littles that I had to drive around, and, if they got sick in the middle of the night, I had to take them to the emergency room. So it's kind of like I was the one that wasn't smoking weed, and he was smoking weed, but whatever. And then the other thing that really flipped my brain on cannabis, not that I had a negative connotation with it, but I don't think I had a solid understanding of the wellness aspect or the health aspect. And around the very same time, my ex-husband's brother was really sick with cancer. And he was living in Arizona. And, there was, I think, at least 2 trips that my ex-husband took with weed to drive to Arizona to give to my brother-in-law to help him. And when he was using cannabis as a cancer patient, he was a much better human being. He wasn't in pain as much. He had an appetite, so he sat at the dinner table and ate. And it was terminal. Like he wasn't going to make it. He wasn't going to make it out of this one alive. The handwriting was on the wall, and it really, I think, eased his suffering, and it taught me. It opened my eyes about this particular plant. And this is from and truly grain of salt, Boulder hippie running around in leggings. And, I mean, just think about it. It's like, it's just so cliche at this point, but, shopping at Whole Foods and using tinctures, and my children, I always tried natural stuff before I put them on any medication. And, so for me, like somebody that was kind of motivated in the health way of natural, this was just such a very touching personal experience that I just went, holy crap. If we can do this is like, please sign me up, hurry up. How do I get involved? So I was very motivated after that about this plant. And I didn't even know, I didn't know very much about it. I really didn't. I didn't understand the drug war at the time. I didn't understand, I didn't even understand the life cycle of a plant. I didn't get it, any of it. And so it was crash course. I mean, I was just drinking from a fire hose from every aspect of how to grow it, what it needs. Oh my gosh, what does a sick plant look like? In Colorado, oh my God, you just can imagine the horrific scene when there's no regulatory and people are just throwing whatever on these plants and whatever. But in the process, when I did finally figure out a way that I could get involved with this friend of mine, in the process, I started meeting a lot of patients. And man, if that doesn't flip and smack you right in the face, I don't know what does. And probably other than, my experience with my brother-in-law at the time, starting to meet, patients, chronic, horrible, from MS to ALS to horrible stories about cancer, seizures. That was the other thing, is that was right around when there started to be chatting about kiddos with seizures. Yeah.
That's around the time the Sanjay Gupta special aired.
Yeah. And I mean, when you see that, when you witness that and you understand that, I don't know, I think it's like 11% of Americans suffer from some sort of seizure disorder. What?
Yeah, it's a lot.
What? And just like everything, often with this plant, what I find is it takes that personal experience to open your flipping eyes.
Mm.
And I would wish that it didn't. I wish that, you know, we were all just so much more laid back and understanding and thoughtful and kind to one another and open-minded. Sure. But even, you know, even as we work through prohibition in multiple states, my partner Eric and I, working with legislatures, working with, you know, local governments on, you need an ordinance in order to do this, and this is how it works, and da 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 da, and just the lack of understanding. And then the one time you find, oh yeah, my husband just got cancer, and by the way, or, you know, we just found out my husband has cancer, and I'd really like to know, I need to know more about this plant, because all of a sudden it became very important to them that there was an option. And that's just kind of how it works sometimes, I guess. But I wish it didn't take that. I wish it just took somebody that had cancer, and we learned from that. It doesn't have to be a relative or someone where it truly does cost you to lose them, you know. But that is sometimes how it works until it hits you right in your own backyard. You don't care so much about it.
That's definitely a very moving way to make that point, but I couldn't agree with you more. Can you talk to me? I mean, you mentioned the war on drugs, and not knowing anything about it. What didn't you know about the war on drugs? Like, you were aware that cannabis was illegal federally. You were probably aware of some of the bad PR that cannabis has been getting for the last 90 years. I don't think that's accurate. You know that you.
I think I grew up as a DARE kid, you know.
Same, yeah.
DARE was in. I didn't really put it together, and also wicked privilege, white, middle class, living in Colorado. I mean, seriously, how much more privileged can I be? So there was that little bonus land of, oh, I just wasn't aware because I didn't have to be, because I live a privileged life and didn't have the same recourse as other people my age, everything. The only difference is in a different neighborhood, and the color of my skin is different. And that was also part of the big awakening for me, realizing the disproportionate impact. And that didn't happen overnight either. I mean, I never really thought of cannabis as bad, but I was worried. I didn't want my kids to use it. I didn't want I wanted to be careful. we didn't know what we didn't know. Yeah. So I think just like any, late 30s, early 40s housewife, I was probably thoughtfully concerned. Didn't think at all about alcohol, didn't think at all about a lot of things, but for whatever reason, mushrooms, marijuana, cocaine, which is all around us when we went to college and whatever. I just never thought about the impact of, if I looked different and I had that with me, what would have happened? My life could have been way different. I could have been in jail. I could have lost everything. And I think that that's part of what this whole journey for me is living this completely oblivious, had no idea, got involved in cannabis, started learning about, and not that I maybe didn't understand, maybe not that I didn't know, but really diving into the racist undertones of what happened and why the war on drugs started and where it was targeted. And then hearing the Nixon administration actually say it out loud, why they're doing this. And then watching that just keep going. And then looking at the prison population and then going, oh, fuck, this is race. This is flipping slavery. That's all it is. It's just it's a codified, institutionalized slavery. That's what we're doing.
Slavery. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that happened at a similar time, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a goat cheese factory goat cheese factory in Boulder, Colorado, that had prison labor doing the packaging and labeling and all, and for $1 a day, whatever it was. And it was that first, holy shit, Whole Foods, what are you doing?
And they were that's wild.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to think of what it was called. Haystack Mountain Goat Farm. Wow. And it just kind of exploded. And I'm like, wait a minute. You mean corporations are getting a product produced or packaged or labeled or whatever in prisons, and these prisoners, they're and under the guise of, but they're learning a skill set.
Yeah.
So massive profits are being made, and I mean, granted, it's food, so massive profits, that can be debated.
Razor-thin profits, but yeah.
But still, it's a profitable entity.
Oh, I'm not defending it, but yeah.
Yeah, no. But I'm just saying, like, holy shit. And I remember that was a really big, it's okay if I cuss on this, right? You tell me.
Listen, Meg, we are a Christian audience. Yeah.
Damn it, I knew it.
Swear all the live long day.
I cuss like a sailor, so I just realized
it's
I'm
okay.
like, oh wait. Anyway,
you're talking to a fellow sailor.
Yay. So I think that was another wake-up call to me of like, how does this prison system work? Like, how would I even know? How would I know? Although come to, way back in 1974, 73, my uncle got popped for distribution, possession and distribution with intent to sell in Houston, Texas. And somehow, and it hit full on hippie. If you can just imagine, my uncle looked like Jesus. I mean, just beard, hair, the
walking
poncho,
on water, the whole thing,
all of it, with a whole bunch of weed.
Yeah.
And so my uncle got popped, and my grandparents ended up, spending a fortune to keep him out of prison, but went to country club prison in Huntsville. And Huntsville has a big penitentiary that's not where you want to be, but they also have the side shoot, which we could go and see him. Like, we could go right to his room. It was like a dorm. And it was so funny. Like, it didn't even occur to me. And then I remember when I was telling my mother what I was doing, which that's also another story, which we'll save for another podcast maybe. But she said, well, don't you know your Uncle Jamie went to jail for that? And I'm like, what? And I don't think I ever knew why. I knew he got in trouble. I knew it was around some kind of drugs, but I didn't really know. And I learned all about it. And I'm like, holy shit, this is so crazy. And again, the privilege of a white guy getting popped in Houston, Texas. And had he been a different color, his story, he would still be in prison still right now.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people still in prison right now. And I would, just to keep this slightly topical to the time we live in, yesterday or the day before, Brittany Griner, the WNBA star who was in Russia and got arrested by Russian police for having a cannabis vape cartridge and was found guilty and sent to the gulag, was just released with with some sort of prisoner trade. And part of me is like, yay, Brittany, like of course, like, the human side of me, well, I'm all human, but the one side of me is, yay, she gets to come home to America. That probably sucked, like in Russian prison, blah, like any prison, but she gets to come home and be with her family. But the other side of me is like, God damn it, Joe, like you went on the news like 6 weeks ago or, 10 weeks ago at the start of the midterms talking about how you were going to fulfill your campaign promise of expunging, prisoners with cannabis records. And, so it's like, it's bittersweet. It's like, yay for Brittany, but like, what about the other, several, tens and tens of thousands
of humans.
Yeah. That are still in jail for the same thing in America.
Yeah. And this has been, I don't know, I'm sure you've been watching the socials on this. It is fascinating. I mean, it's like split in exactly the same camps. Like there's, at least I feel like I have empathy for both sides of it, but there's people who are like, that lady should be in jail. And okay, she broke a law in a different country, like, I guess. And then there's the other people, the opposite. I can see how it could be easily politicized, especially right now. Yeah. Well, I think that there's a couple things too that I believe I'm speaking from just
same. I'm a total idiot.
Let me disclaimer.
I'm a dumbass.
Disclaimer. I do not know everything.
I can barely read.
So yeah, that's why there's news on the TV. But but to be fair, let me say this. Let's assume that she on purpose did have the vape cart, because that's another thing that's debatable. I think we've heard that she confirmed it.
I've been smoking weed for most of my life. I've always known where every molecule of cannabis in my life is for this exact reason. But
there was a theory that they had planted it. You know, there was there was some. So, but okay. So let's just say, let's just hypothetically say she on purpose went to Russia to play basketball with a vape cart in her bag, and she got popped. And let me just say, who's thinking about when they go to another country, Russia or indifferent? And I'm telling you, when I was trading in Morocco, there was a moment in time where I was going to go, and I had to have a bodyguard, and the setup was crazy. There was people suggesting I should dye my hair. Like it, you have to be aware. But I also blend in, and I had definitely, wear burqas and all that. But regardless, I think the point is, I don't think she ever intended to become a political prisoner, but man, what a shitty situation to put the country in, right? Because now we've got to make some horrific trade with this merchant of death dude who methed up child armies and then gave them weapons to go fight on meth so that they would just go do whatever. They were like almost robotic. And again, she never, that's not what her intent was. Her intent was to go make money and play basketball for the summer. And God bless her. And
now she has to live with this, dragging this karma luggage of oh God, I just got traded for the merchant. The dude's name is the Merchant of Death, for Christ's sake.
So
it was like the teddy bear strangler.
Exactly. I don't think this is easy for her. I don't think this is easy for her family. I don't think this is easy for anybody. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of ands here. It's not ors, right? It's not, well, we could have, or we could have. It's, we released, Brittany got released. And I really hope all the rest of the prisoners in the United States get released. And I hope that the other political prisoners in Russia get released. And I really hope we fucking figure out this ridiculous, archaic mentality about this plant. And just the fact that we're even there. But you have to realize, you can't go to certain places in Asia with CBD. You'll be put to death. So I feel like we need to not be so arrogant about our access to stuff. We need to be a lot more thoughtful, because what happens is we become an unintended consequence. That the repercussions are massive. Now, what I do appreciate this is we're talking about it. We're talking about a vape cart. We're talking about a professional athlete. We're talking about a woman of color. We're talking about the injustice of this whole bullshit situation. And now more people are becoming more and more aware of how many thousands and thousands and thousands of humans are in our ridiculous prison system, stuck because of a plant. It's absurd. It's absurd.
I totally agree with you. This is making me want to jump ahead and forego the rest of the story, but there is a lot I want to get to in terms of before even coming to Massachusetts. But since we're on the topic, I'm kind of curious, and this is something I'm trying to figure out for myself. Like last night, for example, we're a small company, I do what I can. Last Prisoner Project, I try to give money to them. Last night I bought $250 worth of toys at Target for, Toys for Tots or something like that for the company, like those sorts of things. So let me ask you this: as you become a successful business person, especially in this industry that has so much bullshittery around it, such as what we're talking about right now, what is the responsibility that you feel is expected of you, and B, that you feel like you expect of yourself in terms of the charitable side of things? And even even talking about this. So you are constantly, you and Eric are both you're co-founder with Canna Provisions and business partner, Eric, are constantly asked to come speak in other states, in front of other state legislatures, in front of other business people and key decision makers in states that are trying to go legal. What is the responsibility in terms of what is the non-business related responsibility that you feel like you have?
To talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like that's the first step. And I feel like it is, I'm only one person and I don't have a huge reach. I have a nominal reach. I mean, it's so funny. I think people, I don't know what people think about me. I honestly don't, as far as like what my reach is, what my celebrity is in the cannabis space. It's minor in the scope of the world. But in my professional and personal opinion, I have a responsibility to speak the truth. I have a responsibility to say this is wrong and we should stop doing this. I have a responsibility to run a really good business that pays their employees well and offers them a lot of opportunity so that then they can go be better human beings. Because we write checks. Yes, we donate. Yes, we do all of those things. And I have a lot of things that I'm passionate about. So I have to be really thoughtful about that, you know? But honestly, I think you change the world in your own house, and then you change the world in your own neighborhood, and then you change the world in your own little town of Lee, Massachusetts with 2,500 people. And if I can influence a town to be as thoughtful and kind to us as they are, and so supportive, they have our back at every flippin' second. We are just treated so well in this little town. If I can teach a town of 2,500 people that cannabis is cool, it's okay. And hey, by the way, there's strings attached to this plant and we all need to be aware of it. And if I can work with a flippin' legend like Ken, and who's social equity, who's gone through the war on drugs, who lost everything because of the war on drugs.
And we'll link that chat below.
Yeah. And he and I are arm in arm leading this company along with Eric. We're walking the walk and not just talking about it. I think it's easy to write checks. I think it's really hard to stand up and say, this is not okay. Because
one is an immediate like gratification. Like I signed that check and I'm like, I did my part, you know? And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with what I'm saying, but like, it is a big part of what I'm able to, you know, in the scope of what I'm able to do. My platform is as big as it is. And I, you know, use it the way I feel is important to our brand and also the mission that we're on. And the writing the checks is, you know, makes me feel good inside. But one of the things that I'm keenly aware of, and this is what I'm hearing from you, is that like, and this, I'm curious how you rationalize this as an only child who wants a Oompa Loompa right now, Daddy. But how you rationalize the immediacy with which you want shit to get done, and the reality that this in particular is a generational thing, right? Like we're unraveling almost 100 years worth of damage and racism and systemic bullshit. And it, you know, it's not going to happen in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. It's going to happen in, you know, 20, 30 years, maybe longer. How do you rationalize that?
I think if I didn't have a thoughtful understanding of and a commitment to where I know I can make the biggest impact, if I didn't have that in my heart, I think I would be really frustrated. I mean, just like, you know, just beating on the walls and the doors and the stop doing this. But through this process of cannabis, I have learned how our government works. From the tiniest little town in Lee, Massachusetts, all the way to the federal government. I really do have a thoughtful understanding of how it works, or I should say how it doesn't work. And even, was it yesterday or the day before? In the past few days, Mitch McConnell yanked the Flippin' Safe Banking Act out of the Defense Omnibus Spending Bill.
For the 8th time.
Yeah, shocker. So, you know, everyone's we believe it's passing. We're very confident it's passing. And then we still have this guy who openly said, that marijuana is a Democrat platform, and they're not going to have anything to do with it. The Republicans are not going to have anything to do with it. And I just know that if you ask legislators individually, they will full on support it. But when they're with their party, towing the party line, they won't touch it. Now, what I hope, my biggest hope, going really big platform here, that this Brittany Griner situation brings a massive look in the mirror of our hypocrisy and what crap this is, so that maybe we convince a few more people. And I don't know. I'm hoping it's a topic, and it's a hot topic. I mean, people are furious or really passionate, and it's fascinating to see the like I said, the spectrum of the upset. But I think I'm going to stick to my knitting, because where I know I can make the biggest impact as a human being is with my family, my kids, animals that I help, my own animals, my sweet little town of Lee, Massachusetts, and my employees.
It starts at home.
And if I can create opportunity and training and ways that my employees can be better human beings than when they started with us, then I'm in my own way changing the world a little bit at a time. And if I can teach my 140 employees about the drug war, and if I can have us all using the same lexicon about this is what's wrong with our platform, and we need to fix this, and what are the ways that we can do it. And if I can get a town like Holyoke, Massachusetts, with a great mayor and a great lots of support for cannabis in that town, and it was massively impacted by the war on drugs. I mean, massively. If we can impact that town, and we do, and we have, that is how change is done. And it's not simple, and it's not overnight, but it is palpable. I can see it. It's happening.
Yep.
And we've seen this with cannabis all over the place, often where we ended up having to open the store or have the grow was in a place that was not desirable. They didn't want us where where people could see you. Oh my God. And not that Holyoke was that way, but Holyoke it has absolutely been decimated by war on drugs, obviously the economy, industry leaving, and it just was stagnant from what once was the wealthiest, the opioid crisis. Yes, all of it. But it was once the wealthiest. It was the wealthiest city in the United States back in the day. Yeah. Amazing. When all those factories were cranking. So I guess long story short is when we opened, there was nothing else in our campus. Nothing. There was not the hair salon that is there now. There wasn't the Blue Door Cafe, which is there now. There's another restaurant that's going to be opening really soon, just right across the parking lot from us. Up the street on High Street, there's multiple businesses that have opened. I'm not saying that's because of us. I'm saying it's because a new business with money to invest into a community and hiring of multiple human beings to work in our space who have money to spend. They go out in the community. Many of them live in Holyoke. They go out in the community. They spend the money that they make with us, and that changes the community. And then we talk about this all the time. We always say shop local, shop local. What we don't really talk about is the biggest way you can help your local economy is by going to that restaurant, going to that shop. And yeah, you might pay a little bit more, but the benefit of your community as a whole is way more impactful. And I think those are the things we're trying to teach our employees. We're trying to teach, we say it all the time, we vote with our dollar. We vote with our dollars every single day. And we try to educate our employees why we carry certain brands, why we don't carry others, why we choose to support one charity over another, why we are really thoughtful when we do look at charities. We do look at the spend. We do look at their budget. We do understand how much of the money is actually going to benefit prisoners or patients or whatever the case might be, right? I mean, we all know the fleecing of America with charity is a big thing, and there's 6-figure salaries or 7-figure salaries. And I understand it's a business and it has to operate a certain way, and you need those fundraising humans, which are expensive in order to keep the thing going. But when you see like 10% of the proceeds go to actually help the cause or less. It's just hard, it's really hard. So again, how do we impact the world, and how do we try to change this massive ship that has been sailing for 100 years, and it takes forever to turn it? It's the little things that you do that I think make the biggest impact.
I love that.
I mean, I guess I could run for office.
Have you thought about it?
Yeah, Eric and I have talked about it.
And
we'll see.
2024. Meg for prez.
Oh no, I don't want that job. But I believe me, I think it's important. I think that's the other thing, by the way, understanding how our government process works, and understanding that all politics is local. It is. And if you don't show up for the school board election, you're basically not helping, because it's all upstream. The politicians that we're voting for at the national level, they didn't start. I mean, some of them did.
Right. They were city councilors. They were.
Yeah. And if you don't put to vote in now, guess what? Guess who's taking over? The people that you chose not
Mitch
to.
McConnell.
The apathy. It's the apathy of America that is killing this country.
I feel that. I definitely feel that. And especially after not the last election, but the one prior to it, where, I think we were our national, the national balloons over our head, some of our heads were popped, and we felt like, why the fuck does this even matter? Like, this is insane. But I understand that. And I like the sentiment of like, yeah, it's not just writing checks. It's not just, some sexy mission statement. It starts with the employees. And I totally vibe with that. Like, like I said, we're small. Our resources are what they are. And for us, similar to like how I imagine you guys started, it's with you're operating with values, right? It's not, making a living is nice, but operating with values and purpose is obviously far more rewarding to people than money. The money usually follows that, usually. But having a mission-driven purpose is hugely important, and like seeing the effects on that. And I'm going to keep it about myself and pump up my ego a little bit. Not that it needs it, but like in Vermont right now with cannabis coming online, in the last 50 days or whatever, October 1st, being able to see the impact we're having locally as, these new businesses who weren't a thing yesterday now have, in my opinion, very beautiful brands. They have the tools to go do exactly what you're talking about. Okay. Now like you have the tools to go implement change, whether it's, just on that initial level of starting your business. And then the bigger picture part of this, which is now freeing cannabis to the masses, basically. So I love talking about that ripple effect. It's a beautiful thing, especially when you're conscious of it.
I agree. I think it's, it is just, I think it's overwhelming and sometimes daunting to think about, oh, how do I change the world? And it's like, just go out your front door and do it. You don't have to go very far, it can be, and I think once you break it down like that, it really does help. And I think understanding that you have I just personally believe we have an obligation to participate in the political process. And it is important that we do. And it is important that you pick up the phone and call your legislators, your city council, your select board, your town manager. They don't hear from very many people. Yeah. So if you don't call, who's going to? And that's what I tell people all the time when we consult for companies as they're trying to figure out, should I go in this town? Should I not go in this town? I'm like, have you called? Have you talked to your local government yet? Let's start there. Because if they don't want you, don't go there. Just, it's not worth it. Cannabis is flipping hard enough. It is such a hard business. And everyone thinks that, you get a cannabis license and it gives you an ATM that just spits out $100 bills all day long. And they look at the revenue, but they don't understand the other side of the ledger there. And that is, when you're running a federally illegal business, the government takes a pound of flesh, and they do. Yeah. It's very expensive to run this business. And We are very fortunate to be a profitable company. We're very fortunate to have run this business super efficiently and using business physics. And we're really proud of that.
Physics.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of cannabis, a lot of people that start cannabis companies have never really understood a P&L or a balance sheet. Right. They don't understand taxes. They don't understand deductions. They don't understand, it's one of those things where there's just, at the end of the day, cash is king, and you have to be cash flowing in order to operate a business. It's just, especially in our business, because we can't get really loans from anybody. You can't just get a revolving line of credit from your bank like a lot of small businesses can. So you have to run very, very thoughtfully with making sure you have enough cash to operate. And it's critical. And I see a lot of decks come across my computer, decks for companies raising money, decks for companies that, hey, this is what we're doing. We're raising $8 million, whatever. And I always look at the experience on the team, like who are the principals, and what have you done? And some of the most fierce conversations I've had is with people that are brand new, so excited, raising money. Look at my business plan, woohoo! And I just break. I'm brutal. Yes. I'm brutal. And it's one of those things where we're seeing it right now in Massachusetts. I mean, there was an eviction notice served on a company yesterday that we're aware of. There are several companies
not paying their bills.
They can't. They don't have cash flow. And and this is kind of the irresponsibility of the free market. So, take it or leave it. Yeah. And I don't think that this is lost on, especially on social equity applicants. I don't think it's lost at all. I hope it isn't. But now that we're prioritizing, now we're getting social equity, the loans and everything. And only the hardest, most competitive part of the market ever is right now in Massachusetts. So good luck. When seriously, you're going to have to commit so much to advertising for people to even know that you're there. And there are people still operating with the sorely mistaken assumption, if you build it, they will come. And I'm sorry, that ship sailed. It's gone. I'm watching dispensaries just in the Berkshires. If I see one car in their parking lot, they're lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're doing it. And it's just, I know a lot of companies aren't paying their bills. They're not paying their vendors.
Where are they fucking up, Meg? Is it they aren't thinking about cash flow? Is it they're not? So just my perspective in this, because I also talk to a lot of those people. And this is kind of a recent thing for me, just because we're in New England and, we started off mostly with New England clients, but the business acumen was not what I was used to. You know what I mean? And meaning like there was none, right? So when you're looking at those decks and you're looking at those principles, at least when I'm having discovery calls with, dispensary groups, and I'm using air quotes for anybody listening to me, there is no experience. They sold eighths of weed in their college dorm, or, they worked at, on the floor of, some grow house or something like that. The business acumen, the experience is purely weed focused and has nothing to do with CPGs or the retail experience or any of these things that you would hear about in any other industry outside of cannabis. Like the thought and intent of opening any business is thinner in my experience in this industry. And there are a lot of fly-by-night companies. I'm not surprised that you're seeing empty parking lots in some of your local competitors' parking lots.
Yeah,
it makes sense. It's just the nature of it.
Yeah, you ask, what are they doing wrong? And I would say, I don't know that I can't fault humans for wanting to create and get a piece of this and think it's cool, and I want to sell weed, and isn't that fun? And
can I contextualize, so just to take some of the heat off you, let me contextualize it for you, in my opinion, in Vermont. So in Vermont, we have just over 500,000 people, maybe 600. There's 600 something thousand people that live in this state. So it's pretty tiny. It's super rural, very rural. If you live if you live anywhere, you're lucky if it takes you 30 minutes to go somewhere, or else, it's going to take you 2 hours. Right. So you have to want to live here. You have to like driving, and you have to be okay with the darkness. Now that legalization is happening, or has happened, and retail is opening and all of that, there are the number of licenses in this state would be able to comfortably handle a population 10 times its size. Right. And there aren't 620,000 cannabis users in this state.
Right. No,
right?
there's not.
There's maybe 100,000 or like whatever it is. Even say it's half, you know what I mean? And you have a retail dispensary in Burlington, which is, similar to Lee or Holyoke on a smaller scale. And then you have dispensaries all over the rest of the state, which are small rural towns, like the ones between Lee and Boston, or Worcester and Lee, like those sorts of things. So here it is the, I don't want to say cash grab, but it is the fast grab, like I'm here first, I'm putting my flag in this ground, and I'm a brand now. And that means the money printer is going to start printing out those $100 bills.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar to kind of like, and this is just capitalism. This is just the way capitalism works. Like, forget cannabis. Like if you're an ice cream shop and then all of a sudden there's 100 ice cream shops open up near you, like you're probably screwed. Or at least you have to be conscious of what differentiates yourself, why, like who your customer is and how to talk to them. So what were you, so let's put it back to you, like, forget your competition. I don't want you to pass judgment or feel like you have to talk shit about what's going on in Mass, but like, what were you doing right?
So
why is your parking lot full?
We're 300 yards off the Mass Pike. That's why. Because when I was driven to Lee and asked where shown a whole bunch of spaces that were put on, that were under LOI for us to operate a dispensary, we drove past the one place I knew for sure there needed to be a dispensary, and it wasn't for sale. And that's why, and that's why we're successful. I mean, our little powerhouse of Lee, Massachusetts, and we're the only one right now. We're the only dispensary in Lee. So you go to Great Barrington, there's 6, 7, 8 now. I don't even know. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And the same thing in Pittsfield. I think there's 10 or 11.
Yeah, there's 10.
I guess, look, I appreciate that people want to, believe in free market, and that's how it should be run. And certainly that, we're here in Massachusetts. We could have chosen limited licensing states. We could have done things a lot differently, but we chose Mass. And part of that was because the locations that we chose were super intriguing. Part of it was because the location that we have, 300 yards off the Mass Pike in Lee, is I'm across the street from McDonald's and next door to Dunkin' Donuts. I don't need to do a traffic study. I don't need to do a marketing study. It's like Walgreens and CVS. You know what I mean? If Walgreens opens, CVS is opening catty corner. That's just how it works.
Let's contextualize that for non-Bay State and specifically New England, but I would limit it to the Bay State, to maybe Rhode Island, and for sure New Hampshire, not Vermont. Vermont is not included in this. Dunkin' Donuts is a mecca. And that's not an overstatement.
No.
It is a mecca. It is crazy what New Englanders will do for their friggin' Dunkin' Donuts coffee. It is unbelievable. So you saying that, I saw the Dunkin' Donuts, and really what you saw was the line from the drive-through, and you were like, people who like donuts probably also
people get off the highway. People get off the Pike to get their coffee.
Yeah, they want their pre-roll and iced regular in the morning, and then they'll come back and get another pre-roll in their number one from McDonald's at the end of the day.
It's so true. And we have a Starbucks now too. So we're like double whammy at this point. And that's a super bifurcated population. It doesn't necessarily pinch people off. It's like there's Dunkin's lovers and there's Starbucks lovers. And now we've got them both within a block of my store. So I'm winning.
Yeah, so
it's
you
awesome.
find the Venn diagram of cannabis lovers in the middle, and then that's where you put your location. So it wasn't like you were, you didn't overthink that.
We were the second standalone retail store. Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts, and 300 yards off the Mass Pike, and you can see my store from the exit. I mean, it's just perfect. But the other thing too, though, is we were the second standalone retail to open. We were number 21, I think, number 21 total in adult use dispensaries, but we were second. Caroline's Cannabis in Uxbridge was first, and we were right after her. And we love Caroline and Steve. They did great work. We're good friends, love them to death. And we knew being first to market was really important, having done this in other states and watched what happens in other states. So that was lesson number one. No, lesson number one was location. Lesson number two was get open, hurry up and get open. And then the rest of it is committing to your customer experience, committing to what is your differentiator? What are you standing for on this platform of weed, knowing that we're going to have a lot more competition. And I think we've just committed to build that experience as fast and furious as we can, and stick with it. And we're a high touch retail experience. So it's not cheap. It's expensive to run like we run, but it makes sense and it works. And then when you look at the demographics of the Berkshires and you look at the demographics of our store and people coming in for the first time, or they haven't tried cannabis since a long time ago, or traditional medicine has failed them, a million things, right? We have a sweet spot in that we love to spend time with customers. There's no rushing. There's no need to rush because of how we do our business. And I think our customers are appreciative of it. And we also are able to serve people super efficiently and quickly. If you already know what you want, we can get you in and out, no problem. So we kind of are, we're a nice little circle of awesome customer service, no matter kind of what you're looking for. So I think there's that. But I do want to just touch on this. It's sensitive, right? This is a sensitive conversation in that I don't love limited license states. It just always seems pay to play, which means only the rich people are going to win. And, it's just, I don't love it. It's hard, but also it's lucrative. It works. Here in Massachusetts, there's no license cap at the top from the state. There's no license. The challenge with that is a lot of people are going to be impacted when a decent percentage of the market fails. Landlords, contractors, neighborhoods. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of like if you're a free market person, you're like, well, that's the consequence of a free market, Yeah. But I'm a little more sensitive to that. And I really do think we need to slow our roll a little bit here, because unfortunately now social equity is getting their time to shine, and it's the worst time you could be opening a business in this state. I mean, who knew a pandemic was coming? Who knew war in Ukraine was coming? Who knew that inflation and a recession and $5 gallon of gas, although now it's back to where it was before, so thank goodness. But we don't have a magic ball. No one saw this coming. And we're trying to figure it out as fast as we can, but opening 5 more cannabis stores within 20 miles of each other is certainly not going to help the situation. So that is concerning to me. And I feel like we have to be responsible as a state, as a Commonwealth, as an industry, to make sure people understand it's really risky to open right now. Really, really risky.
For sure. I mean, just the cost of, for all the reasons you just said, the result of which being like just supply chain costs, the cost for building out, a retail store that looks good, it ain't cheap. It's for sure a weird time to be opening any business, never mind a cannabis business.
It's a minimum $500,000 just to build out and open a dispensary. That doesn't even include your inventory or your OpEx. It doesn't include any of that. And I just, our Lee stores was $1 million. Our Holyoke store was $1 million. And that was before we bought 1 gram of inventory. And back then our terms were COD, baby. You better write me a check. I'm not giving you anything. Write me a check. We were thrilled when we got 7-day terms. We're like, oh, hallelujah. I can maybe sell some of this and pay the bill. But also we were super fortunate because we were, I don't want to say immediately successful, but it happened really fast. We were very, very successful.
How do you cope with what you're just saying, which is like, you have to slow down, but also be first? Like, what is the middle ground there? So like, because what's going to happen is like that slowdown, like that time is going to happen after the shark frenzy, right? That all this has to happen in order for there to be a a time where we were like, let's reflect, let's build this more, like let's see what we've learned over the last couple of years of Massachusetts legalization. Let's mature the legislation or regulations around it, whatever. And let's mourn the loss of these, X% of cannabis businesses that just had to peace out because the market's fucked.
I think that the lesson is there's a life cycle of an industry, there's a life cycle of a business, right? And so we knew our sweet spot, and we knew how to take advantage of that if we were able to be successful in what our plan was. But your business plan when you're the second standalone retail to start, and your business plan when you're the 27th in the same town to open is completely different. God, I hope it's completely different. And you're probably going to need to raise a lot more money. That's just fact, because advertising is going to be a large part of your budget, and training your employees to make sure that there's some magical thing that happens across the counter or however you choose to sell weed. That's important too. But we've always been, I would say, hands down, my best advice that I could give anybody opening a cannabis business, the one thing I know for sure is small and profitable. Be small and be profitable. And if you do that, good things happen, and you can pay your bills, and you can pay yourself to, pay your mortgage and, pay your car payment and send your kid to college or whatever. This is what I know. I don't know. I'm not an MSO. I've never been an MSO, and I have no intentions of ever being a multi-state operator and the CEO of a public company. No, thank you. No, hard pass. What I do know how to do is run a small, profitable business. And that's what we do. And that would be my thing. These people that are, I'm going to build out 100,000 square foot grow, and I'm raising $50 million. And I'm going to tell you, you are never going to pay that back. Not going to happen.
It's a crazy market right now.
Open a 5,000 square foot grow and give me a buzz, because I'd love to buy from you.
Meg, I have a whole other podcast written, that we didn't get to do. So I hope we can do a part 2. We've gone for an hour, and I don't want to take up too much of your valuable time. I do have a whole other, we didn't even talk about Mindful. We didn't talk about Colorado. We barely even talked about Canna provisions, but I think the stuff that we have talked about is really valuable. And I think contextualizes a lot of what, of that journey stuff. I hope we can do a part 2 sometime where we can actually get into like how the hell you started Canna provisions.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there someday. But for now, like, that seems like a really good place to put a dot on this conversation. I hugely appreciate your time. I love talking to you, and we'll book the next, I'll get Dan on the line after this, and we'll book the next one.
Yeah, I love it.
You've been an amazing guest. You've taken us from the Rocky Mountain highs to the even higher achievements in the Bay State. And we're lucky to have you as a client at CannaPlanners. We appreciate you. All that's left to do is just let my listeners know where they can find out more about you, find out more about Canna provisions, so they can come buy weed from you.
So you can find us online, cannaprovisions.com, Canna Provisions Group on IG, Canna Provisions on Facebook. Please check out our menu, our amazing, amazing menu, our amazing smash hits cannabis grown by Chem Dog himself.
We didn't even talk about Chem Dog.
Legendary. I'm so lucky that I get to smoke this man's weed every day.
Tell me about it.
And yeah, this is one thing I will share with listeners. We try to do a lot of good with our business. We try very, very hard, from supporting local arts to food banks to animal shelters. Those are kind of that's our sweet spot. And none of that is possible unless you come and buy weed from me. And we're obviously women-owned, women-led, and I believe we're doing really good things. And if you're the type of person that votes with your dollar, Canna Provisions is a good vote.
Well, Meg, that's a beautiful statement. And we here at CannaPlanners believe in you and believe in that mission that you are so successfully going for. So thank you again for being here and talking to my listeners about your journey. Again, we didn't even talk about your journey. We barely talked about any of the charitable stuff that I had on my list of things to talk about. We did not talk about chem at all. So these are all important things that maybe we can follow up with on another discussion. But for now, thank you so much, Meg Sanders of Canna Provision, the baller CEO, making things happen in the Bay State. We appreciate you. This has been Common SENSimilla. I forgot the name of my podcast. My name is Will Reed. I've been your
What?
host. Thank you so much. Be sure to share this with your friends, family, enemies, whoever. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We'll see you next time. Peace.